Hey, everybody. 4 deaths, totally unrelated to COVID, but all getting national attention. COVID surges across the country and a lot of deaths, but also just an astronomical number of cases. A scene from CW's Sci-Fi The 100, a great show if you haven't watched it, that says everything about who we are as people. A TikTok video that I did that has 500,000 views that says everything about how much we hate Donald Trump. And Donald Trump pardoning Roger Stone, which says everything about where Donald Trump's head's at. What does that all have to do with each other? You're going to find out along with my 2 awesome guests, a massive relationship blogger and an awesome youth mentor, all tonight, with you being super interactive and part of it with me. I'm Rob Nelson. It's Rob Nelson Live.
Meet Rob Nelson, talk show host.
Because you got the 70s thing going there. My name's Rob Nelson. I used to have a talk show on Fox, a show on Fox News, but news in America is so produced. I don't care if you think it's left, right, center, fake. You passed tougher legislation to deal with the paparazzi after what happened with you and your family.
I think it's very important that we focus on rebuilding.
All right, everybody, welcome to Rob Nelson Live, our Friday show. How's it going, Bruce?
Doing good, Rob. Doing good.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Looking nice.
You too.
So, Bruce, listen, before I want to talk a minute about our, the stuff you're streaming to, because this is all about keeping this thing interactive. But I have to say, this whole thing, I did this 5 things because I'm trying something new. And maybe even like I'll do it like people can just be like, we'll do a grab bag of things. I'll take from it and tie them all together like a jigsaw puzzle because it's fun. But I actually, there's a connection to all of these things. And I like sort of taking all the random disparate pieces of stuff because all through the week stuff pops in my head and I'm seeing stuff from me. So I'm like, how does that fit to this, to that? Tie them all together. So it's like Rob's jigsaw puzzle tonight. Meanwhile, you're doing a jigsaw puzzle of connecting people, right? We're getting some great hits and interaction from some platforms we didn't expect to.
Yeah, so we've been working with Reddit for the past couple of weeks, and that's always been crazy active, and I couldn't be more surprised and thankful at the same time. Just recently, the show's had now a newfound relationship with ViewSub, so hello to the founding team at ViewSub. So on top of streaming to, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, Twitch, we also have Instagram, Reddit, and now ViewSub. So thank you all to everyone. And
all right, guys, thank you all for watching. Love all the feedback. Love the comments, especially you Reddit people. The Reddit users get in there. I like it. They go. Facebook, come on, you got to keep up. TikTok, whatever. TikTok's going to get banned. I'm going to show my video before it's too late. It's going to get wiped out. All right, here's my monologue before we get to my guest. So I started out 4 deaths, right? The 4 deaths have nothing to do with COVID. The 4 deaths are each interesting in their own way. One of the stars of Glee, Naya Rivera, goes out boating with her son, rents a boat in Ventura County, California. They find the boat like 3 hours later with a 4-year-old kid in a life vest, the life vest on the boat, and she's gone. Drowned at this point. They've done a massive search, and they're expecting to find her body, hopefully, eventually. But I was like, wow. And they asked the 4-year-old kid, and he's just like, yeah, she never came back to the boat. And I'm thinking, did she go? They went for a swim, but he's in the boat. Did she swim away and he fell asleep? I mean, you're 4 years old. Like, you're watching mom. Like, it wasn't like she was yelling or screaming. It was like she never came back. It made me think about life and kids. What does that kid know? What did that kid see? What's that kid's future like? And how, she was this big star, just like boom, takes her kid on a boating trip and gone. Amy Kincaid in Kentucky is a nurse, 36-year-old nurse with kids, husband, happy family, the whole deal, is driving, sees an accident, gets out of her car, goes to check on the guy in the accident to make sure he's okay. He's like, nobody hit me. I think he'd hit something. He's off to the side. She goes to check to see if he's all right because she's a nurse. A 2-car collision ensues and kills her and the guy she went to check on. I'm like, what the? Like, you're a guy in an accident. You're like, oh, I'm okay. I lived. Some really kind Samaritan nurse comes up to you to say, you okay? Yeah, good. And boom, you're both dead 20 seconds later because a car piles into truck piles into them. Like, just like that. Robert Fuller in Palmdale, he's the black guy who hung himself in a tree. And remember when it happened a couple weeks ago, everyone was like, you know, like he didn't hang himself, somebody killed him, or on the whole BLM stuff. And there's a lot of press on that, like how he, you know, he was suspicious. And the family's still like having an independent autopsy and the whole thing. But the sheriff's department, the autopsy has all come out and said he hung himself. And it's not 100% of a surprise. He has a history. You know, he was hospitalized saying he had voices in his head telling him to kill himself. He wanted to, 1 point wanted to put a gun to his head. You know, he's texting he's going to harm himself. Like, this guy was mentally anguished and he hung himself from a tree. It is horrible. The pain, the loss. And then everybody else goes, he didn't hang himself. It's got to be a lynch mob killing, which gets back to how the BLM stuff gets wrapped into everything. Because as much as we need social justice and as much as we need to start recognize the inequities and dealing with them, and not just around race, but around the economic realities that lead to those inequities around race. This wasn't about race, and yet people still want to make it about race. It's like everything has to be about race. And I promise you, if you're a white person right now, you can say whatever you want. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But when you walk up to black people, you're thinking twice about what you're going to say. It's almost human nature at this point. Like, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to do the wrong thing? Like, there's a whole awkwardness around it. I mean, it had it happen to me at the gym. Like, I went sitting on a bench and this guy comes over and he's a black dude, big black dude. And I'm like, apparently he'd been on the bench with this stuff. And he's like, well, what the? I was like, oh, sorry, man. I thought you were gone. You know, I'm like, I'll do my set real quick. You know, he's like, that's cool, man. I'll do the on the bench next to you. No problem. I'm like, great. I'll give you back the weights when I'm done. All good. We're all happy. He's like, cool. Thanks, man. But there was this weird moment you could tell, like, white guy on my bench. And I'm like, black guy thinks I'm on his bench. And I'm like the least racist person in the world, but I couldn't help but have a part of me that went like, you just like, am I going to be looked at as doing or saying something wrong? Not helpful, by the way, to us dealing with the race problem. And black people are having the same reverse issue with white people. But it's creating mental anguish and confusion for a lot of people. The fourth death, the mayor of Seoul, who was likely to be a candidate for the presidency in South Korea, jumps out of a building, commits suicide. And this one is definitely a suicide because he left a note to his daughter basically saying, I'm going to commit suicide. Why? Nobody knows. He'd been accused of some sexual harassment stuff a few years back, and accusations had just come out. Maybe they were real. Maybe he was scared it was going to ruin his career. No one accused him of like violently raping them or something he'd go to prison for. So at best he'd probably lose his career, his place, a prominent politician. He's got a daughter or whatever. He jumps and kills himself. That's dark. That's scary. And meanwhile, we're looking at a world full of the COVID virus, which is surging. And honestly, I swear to God, people don't know what to believe. They really don't. And I get it. You know, a guy said to me the other day, he's like, I wish, again, at the gym, I have a lot of interesting conversations at the gym. It's an interesting place to be right now. And he's like, I wish I was a scientist or a doctor so I actually knew what to actually believe. Because you hear all these competing narratives, and clearly everybody's got a narrative, like one side and the other side. And depending on which side you're on, we're either fine, everything's good, throw your mask out the window. Or on the other side, are you kidding? We're heading for the plague pandemic. Put your mask on in your car. Like everything needs to shut back down. People are scared, they're confused, and they don't know what to believe. And you can't blame people for not knowing what to believe, right? I mean, statistics get whipped around left, right, and center. Cases are going up, cases are going up here, but deaths are going down. And look, the simple reality is, you know, the simple, ugly, scary reality is that most of the COVID deaths are older people. Like almost half of them were nursing homes until about a month ago. Most of them are older people, and most of them are people who are sick or have an underlying morbidity condition, a comorbidity. And again, you can say, no, I saw the story about a person who was 15 and perfectly healthy and died. And I'm thinking, right, one little story like that gets blown up. But the reality is under 20 people dying of COVID, the percentage is almost statistically insignificant. It's literally like less than being killed by a rattlesnake. But there'll be one story, and that one story will get in our heads and scare everybody. So people are scared, and they're confused, and they're not sure who to believe. And they're not sure quite what to think and what's safe. And at the end of the day, people keep going out. So you hear it, right? And by the way, Tulsa, you know, Trump has a rally, and they're saying that rally caused an outbreak. People going out on Memorial Day weekend to the beaches caused an outbreak. And people hear that and go, But at the same time, millions of people protested. And you don't hear the media saying that caused an outbreak. You hear them saying, well, it might have contributed. So people are smart, and they're going, well, wait. Millions of people protesting didn't cause an outbreak, but Trump rally did, but me going to the beach on Memorial Day did. And people don't know. But here's what I do know. People know what's instinctively best for them. They know what makes sense in their own heads. People aren't going out because they're stupid. They're not going out because they're selfish or because they don't give a shit about the world. They're going out because at some level they think they're okay. And they think the people around them are okay. Now, they could be right, they could be wrong, but they're going, I'll take my chances. Maybe I'll get this thing and I'll be fine. Here's the thing. People are good at doing math in their own heads, in their own lives. I don't mean real math. Do you know anybody who died of COVID-19? Most people can't say yes. It's not surprising. The number of deaths statistically of all the population isn't that high. Do you know anybody who died of cancer? Absolutely. Do you know anybody who died in a car wreck? I know like 4 people who died in a car wreck. Do you know anybody who knows anybody who died in a car wreck? My list gets huge. Do you know anybody who knows anybody who died of COVID? Yeah, but smaller. Do you know anybody who has COVID? I do. I know a couple of people who had it, but not a huge number. So people instinctively go, well, if I don't know a lot of people who had it or anyone who had it or anyone who died, I think I'm okay. And you can't say they're crazy for saying that, but they're made to feel guilty and they're made to feel bad for saying that. The scene from the 100 that I was talking about on the most recent episode, great show again, if you haven't watched it. It's a great kind of story about life and, multiple planets and the whole deal. But basically, to save themselves, they get these people and force them to do something at their own, they agree to, and they know that they're going to die when they do it. They all die of radioactivity. And when it's over, the woman who made them do it feels bad, as the people who she killed are like furious, they're friends and whatever. And she says to her friend, I feel horrible. And her friend says, but you did it to save the people we love. And she says, but they had people they love too. And to me, that says so much about humanity. We all ultimately do what's in our best interest and the best interest of those we love. But sometimes that comes at other people's expense. So we're in a world right now where that's happening. And we're dividing and dividing. So the more we divide, the less we come together. Because, the woman, that nurse, she didn't do what was in her best interest. She stopped to take care of someone and she died. Now, maybe she knowing she was going to get hit by a car, she wouldn't have done it. But either way, there are people who take risks that even put their own life at risk knowing I might not be okay. But that's a small number. So if everybody's acting in their own self-interest, where does that get us? It gets us to a place where there's a lot of emotional confusion, a lot of scared people, a lot of fear, a lot of depression. It's massive. It's hitting everybody. I know super stable people. It's hitting me. I deal with depression my whole life. It hits me like crazy. I'm like in double overload. But there's people who are like happy-go-lucky who are feeling anxious and depressed. And if you're a man right now, because tonight's show is about being a man in the COVID era, you're really dealing with a lot. I know, I don't mean to like put up a thing like white guys are in trouble. All men to some extent, but white guys too. I mean, white guys have an extra thing because you feel bad for being white. But men in general aren't trained or raised to deal with emotions and process them as well as women are. That's not a sexist statement. It's just a fact. I'm a weird exception to the rule. And every woman I know, and every relationship I ever had, they were always like, could you be less emotional? You're like a girl. So I get it. Most guys aren't. But guys are carrying a lot. Everyone is. But I want to talk about guys right now because they're carrying a lot of pain, a lot of emotion, a lot of confusion. And there's not a lot of outlets for it because we're not taught to have those outlets. We're not taught to talk about those things. We're not taught to share those things. But guys are imploding. And you don't want a bunch of testosterone guys to keep imploding because that leads to a lot of bad things. So let me bring on my friend and first guest, James Michael Sama. James is he's an amazing guy. He's a well-known relationship blogger, actually one of the most read relationship bloggers. Like 36 million people read Michael's stuff, James Michael's stuff. And he's also an author of an upcoming book called Me, Myself, and My Identity. He's a life coach. He's a fascinating individual. James, thanks for being here.
Rob, it's good to see you again, man. 3,000 miles away this time, but it's good to be back.
Right. I haven't seen you in a long time. Like I said, I haven't seen you since you lost your hair.
Yeah.
So let's take a minute and just talk about, what I was saying. I led this all up to the idea of men because I think men are carrying something extra. And you've been a relationship coach a long time, and you said something to me, and I want to start with that. You said, you coached a lot of people on relationships and how to get dates and how to get the girl and how to do the thing. You had a lot of guys, obviously, and a lot of women read your stuff because you gave the guys perspective. Mm-hmm. And, you said then at the end, a lot of them came back to me and said, okay, I'm actually not quite ready for this. I think I got issues I need to work on in myself. I thought that was fascinating.
It's when I say 100% of people, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, every single person that I've worked with has either come to me for maybe some personal development stuff or actually dating things. And then they get down the road, they start getting some dates, and they're like, you know what? I'm not quite ready to dive into this. I need to really work on myself. And I think such a big part of it, like you were saying earlier, is men are just not, there's this like view of traditional masculinity that, you know, is carried throughout society. Like if you show any sort of vulnerability or emotion or anything, it's kind of like, you know, they're taking away your man card. Like it's all this sort of BS that revolves around the old school view of what it means to be a man that I think it was beginning to become more of a conversation before COVID even hit. And now, you know, excuse me, like you're saying, it's like it's even more in the mainstream because everybody's experiencing their own challenges, their own difficulties.
And as a life coach and a relationship coach and both, but also because you do give a lot of relationship advice and a lot of people read your stuff and have read your stuff on relationships. Do you find that men bring this stuff up? Do they talk about, you know, like I saw this thing for a match. I see these match ads on TV and everything now does, right? Everything's like it's as if it's like, it's all virtual, right? So, you know, the ads are all Zoom ads, right? And they're showing these people like, I decided to, you know, try a different way. And they show them having their like Zoom encounters, you know, on their dates. And one guy says, he's like, you know, I want to seem something like, I want to seem vulnerable, but I don't want to seem like too vulnerable. Like, do you find guys that express this? Like, I don't know how to deal with my traditional masculine stuff, especially in the age we live in. If they say it to you?
To me as a coach, yes, but publicly, no. And I think that's part of the thing is like that's part of the problem, right? Is like we're dealing with these hidden challenges. And I'm not saying go out and, you know, publicly cry at like every Hallmark commercial, but like I think if men are more,
hey, I cry at Hallmark commercials. Come on.
But you're not posting it on Facebook or Instagram, you know. I cried on sometimes.
But I'm a crier.
I never judge you. You know that. Hey, you know what?
Is there something wrong? Why is it considered so bad for men to express that kind of emotion though? Like seriously, I am a crier. Yeah. I get choked up by stuff, and it's cool if you're like a football player and you're retiring. It's totally cool to cry and be like, I'm crying. You know, Peyton Manning can cry when he retires. You know, and that's somehow like you're still a man because you're crying at the loss of your team. But if you cry at something cheesy and sentimental, you're like a, you know, total wuss. Me.
Well, because there hasn't been conversation around it. Like you were saying, like people aren't out there just being open about the fact that, yeah, we have emotions. We're human beings. Right. And it's like, and there's this there's supposed to be this separation. Like, yeah, the football player has spent 20 years like proving that he's a guy. So now all of a sudden, like, it's okay. But if some man hasn't like earned that respect or that clout along the way, it's like, why can't we just be human beings and be open about these things and expressive and honest? You know, that's what it allows us to become ourselves and communicate that with other people and build connections. How else are you supposed to build a connection if you can't express yourself? You know, and the fact that you're confident enough to say that shows that you've actually like done the work and showed up for yourself to be like, yeah, that's me. That's how I am.
Right. And thanks. And I think when we're add in the COVID stuff and it takes an added layer of all this, you know, I think COVID puts one more layer on because now everybody's dealing with emotions and feelings they're not used to, and they don't have many outlets to express them, to talk about them, to share them. You can't go out to a bar. You're not hanging out with friends. I mean, people are, but it's limited. And I think men are feeling trapped a lot, like, I don't know what to do with all these feelings.
100%. And this is the time.
I don't know what to do feeling anxious. I don't know what to do feeling depressed. I'm not supposed to feel scared, but I'm terrified. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid I already lost my job. I'm afraid I'll never get it back. I'm afraid I can't hold my shit together. I'm terrified and I don't know what to do, but I can't say that.
And the I can't say that is the problem, right? Like we need to start saying that. And a lot of times it's like, you know, when you were in school, however long ago, it's like nobody ever wanted to ask that first question. But then when some kid finally raised his hand or her hand and said, hey, I've got this question, there were 15 other people in the class who were like, I was wondering the same thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like it's a matter of being able to step up and kind of giving this unspoken permission to the people around you to be like, hey, I'm feeling this challenge. So other people obviously are going to kind of feel like, hey, me too, me too, me too. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Right.
kind of also feeling that. So, and you're right. Like there's not the same type of outlets anymore. We can't go to the gym. We can't go to the bar. We can't. It's kind of like, what do we do with this? And you know, there's like constructive and destructive ways to deal with these things. And I think now more than ever, men and everybody else are really forced to be introspective. But the stigma around not acknowledging those emotions, right? It's like, yeah, you're not supposed to express them. And if you can't express them, there's shame around it. And if there's shame around it, you want to ignore it in the first place. Right?
Good point,
So
yeah.
now you're sitting alone by yourself being like, I shouldn't be feeling this. I shouldn't be feeling this. So now not only do we not have an outlet, but we also don't have that internal monologue with ourselves because we're just ignoring what we're feeling. So it's like,
Point.
right? So like we need to normalize, and I almost hate that word because it's like anything is normal because everybody's different. So we need to just start openly accepting, like when you feel an emotion, acknowledge it. It's like, why am I feeling this? What is the reason behind it? What is the deeper, connection to myself? What is it teaching me about myself? Right? And so many people are unhappy with who they are as an individual that when you say, hey, you can't leave the house, like you're on lockdown, you can't go do this, do that. Like there's this moment of, I'm alone with a person I don't like.
Lockdown shows us who we are on the inside, our deepest us. It so does. Let me bring in Scottie Jordan. Scottie's a host and influencer. He's the founder of The Gentle Mentor, which is a mentoring site. Works a lot with young people. Scottie, thanks for being here. Scottie, you have a whole history in your own life that led you, and I don't want to take a long version of it, but the short version that led you to want to do this. Because obviously from the outside, and I've worked with Scottie before, coached him, so just full disclosure, I've seen Scottie work at being vulnerable. But you are a guy who looks, sounds, acts like a guy's guy. You are not the guy that's going to be accused of like crying too much or being overly emotional. I don't know what you're like in your personal life when you're home with your wife. I just know what I see, if you start crying, people are going to be like, what's wrong with that good looking dude out there? Here's the little guy. Why is he crying? What's his problem?
He's got everything figured out.
Say you gay, which again, I'm joking, but that's what they're going to think because because that's where people go. Like gay guys can be emotional. Like somehow that's okay.
Yeah.
Straight guys can't.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's taken me a long time to realize this, there is so much strength in vulnerability, And I mean, I used to think like I grew up, without a father thinking that, showing weaknesses for pussies and, it's just weak. And I don't know. I've just gotten to a point now in my life where I've grown up. I've gotten more mature and I've worked on myself where I realized, man, there is so much strength in vulnerability and being honest with how you're feeling. And I actually love what James said about how he was talking about the first question thing. I agree with that, James. And I just think that vulnerability is contagious. So when we can talk about these things and talk about the pain that we're dealing and the shit that we're dealing with, it gives other people permission to do the same. And I'm just such a big believer in that. And it's taken me a long time to get there. And I'm still working at it. But I just believe there's just so much power in that, Rob. There really is.
But we don't do it, right? I mean, we all say it'd be great. The first question, it triggers it. If we could all, but there aren't a lot of places where you see that happening. Even among like influencers and celebs, you hear a lot of women influencers and women celebs the last couple months talking about what they've gone through. Most of the stuff I read from men, it's not that they don't share stuff they're going through, but it's not like going, I felt like crying like every single day. I feel like a wreck. I feel like I'm afraid of everything. And some days I don't know if I even want to wake up, and I'm scared I'm going to lose my girlfriend or whatever it is. You don't hear it.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Scottie. I have thoughts on that, but I want you to keep going.
No, please, James. I want to hear what you have to say, please.
All right, guys, don't be so polite. Let's go. Talk together. I don't care.
We're all gentlemen here. It's this whole thing has leveled the playing field. it has almost like, I heard people in the beginning of this being like, the concept of celebrity is going to be out the window, because essentially the only difference between all of us at this point is which house we're being quarantined in, right? Like celebrities would start to step up and say things and like be on camera, and people were like, dude, go away. Nobody wants to hear from you. Yeah. So it has shown that everybody is just a human being. So just because celebrities have a spotlight doesn't mean that they're any more emotionally able to express these things than anybody else next door, right? So like, just even though, the fact that you haven't seen more men step up is proof of what you're saying, because like, especially famous men have an image to uphold and have a certain thing they're trying to step into every single day of a brand, which is why so many of them are so lonely, because people are like, they love the character I play. They don't love me. They don't even know me. Yeah. Right. So it's like, so how are you supposed to step out of not only a role, now you've got to do like double the work.
Before Scottie, before you say anything, I think that's a really interesting thought, because our culture is changing, and maybe the role of celebrity and even of influencers who are just influencers for not because they actually stand for any particular thought, idea, set of values, but just because they are, will change. But I had an interesting experience years ago, right before James Gandolfini died, in a bar, and which, James, what you're talking about literally happened. You know, James Gandolfini was Tony Soprano, and a guy who was a bouncer at the bar who, you know, growing up in Philly and whatever, had like, you know, his little mini mob experience, kind of went up to him after the bar closed and was like, you know, I used to do this with da-da-da-da, and connected a little to the, you know, this whole thing. And James Gandolfini just sat back and looked at him, put up his hand, and he's like, listen, I don't mean to be rude. He's a really nice guy, James Gandolfini. He's like, I play a mobster on a show. I play one. It's just a character. It's like, it's not me. It's not my personal life. It's not even what my personality's like. But we do think of celebrities as having to maintain a brand and an image. And the only reason I said that, and then Scottie, I want you to respond, is because we still look to people who are influencers or whatever to set trends. So if the trendsetters aren't doing it, why am I going to go out and post my feelings on a platform to have everybody mock me or make fun of me?
But see, I think that's what's not working for a lot of young people nowadays, is they look at these celebrities, these people who they think have it all together, like they're perfect, and they can't really relate because they themselves aren't perfect. And so I've found that, man, if I can just talk about my pain and what I go through, hopefully somebody can relate. And I think, and Rob Markey's been talking about this, hopefully through this time that we're in, will be more mindful social media, will be more people just talking about their truth and talking about their pain, because there are a lot of other people who need to hear that, and hopefully can find the permission to do that themselves. You know, I mean, don't you agree that that's what's wrong with social media, is everyone portraying that they're perfect and they have their lives together, right?
100%, but people are afraid to be the one that doesn't, right? And occasionally somebody does, and I think my point was it tends to be a woman who does. You know, I remember Bruce Willis's daughter coming out and saying, that picture of me by the pool where I look so happy, I was literally suicidal, you know? But I don't hear a lot of guys coming out and saying, you know, this perfect image I painted of me and my family and my life, well, ain't so perfect. I'm fucking scared every day, you know? Even we're like, right? I mean, I think even like I'm pretty willing to say I'm scared of shit and talk about my depression. But I think in general, you know, we're even here right now, right? We kind of come off like, are you scared of anything, Scottie? What are you scared of? What are you really scared of? What are you scared of?
What am I scared? I mean, look, my father my father's in prison. He's been there 7 days after I was born. He's serving a life sentence in Texas. My biggest fear would be to turn out like my father. That would be my biggest fear, you know? And so that actually is a driving force for my life, to really make sure that I'm living right and I'm doing right. But there is a fear that, you know, statistics say that kids, boys who have fathers in prison usually end up that way too. And so that's been a fear of mine my whole life, Rob.
But so, and I get that, but you're nothing like your father.
No,
I mean, I don't know your father, but I'm saying you're nothing like him, right? So why do you fear you'd be that? You're a loving husband. You're great. You work with kids. What scares you? What, that you think you have some genetic demon in you?
Possibly. And I know, and it's not something I think about every single day, but in the back of my mind, it is scary. I'm scared of police. I'm scared of any of that stuff because of what I've been through with my father. Yeah. I mean, I have other fears. My mom passed away of cancer. I'm horrified of getting sick. COVID has really brought that out of just this feeling of anxiety and depression, which I shared on my face. Just thinking of like, man, what if I get sick? What if I die? And it sounds crazy, Rob. And it's not something that I might shout out from the rooftops, but it's true.
Scottie, when you look at your father, and I know you shared before the show that you've recently reunited, you didn't have much contact at all with him for quite a number of years, and recently you have.
Yeah.
What does that feel like for you? I mean, just the raw feeling of reconnecting to a man who you obviously is your father, and some level you care and want to connect, and at some level you're terrified of becoming him, which means some part of you must almost hate who he is at some core level, even though you love him.
Yeah, I mean, I was just tired of going through my life being angry. And so I just wanted to really work on that. And so talking to him, I've had to face my fears. I've had to work on the nerves because I still get nervous. And but I know that in the long run, it's the healthiest thing for me to do, for anyone to do, is to talk about these things. And so that's just what I'm trying to live.
And did you cry when you saw your father?
No, I wouldn't show that. I wouldn't show that.
Did you feel it?
I definitely felt it, but I've been so good at putting those walls up the minute any type of emotion comes. Even now, you were mentioning earlier about crying. I don't cry often, but I want to, but I don't.
Do you cry in front of your wife?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in front of her, you just break down?
Maybe once or twice a year, yeah.
As he laughs. See? We're going to get Scottie to cry. I want you to cry on the show, Scottie. It's therapy. I want you to find something to cry about.
It is.
But no, that's my point, James. You're in pain, Scottie, and you're laughing as you talk about it. And I know you're not like depressed all day long, but you're in pain. You have fear and anxiety, and you're afraid of every day of becoming your father, and you are trying to reunite with someone who abandoned you, and you can't let those walls down. There's pain in there, and you have a wall that keeps that, even if you're talking about it, that keeps that pain from coming out to be, you're not truly vulnerable. You're able to say we need to talk about it, but you can't let that vulnerability in or out because somehow you'll be weak or unable to protect you. What is it that, James, that we can't, you know what I'm saying? And I'm right, Scottie?
Well, you are right, but I also think that me knowing that is the reason why I'm trying to knock these walls down, by having a relationship with him and by trying to communicate. You're right. I do feel those things. And yeah, I fear sometimes appearing vulnerable, but at the same time, I'm just trying to make it work. I'm trying to be better because I don't want to live my life that way, And isn't that the first step? Realizing that you want to change and trying to, no matter how many walls I have up, I'm trying to take that step.
And go ahead, James, go.
I think there's value in Scottie saying it out loud, right? And I think we all express these things in different ways. So there's like, so yeah, he might laugh, but that might be the way that he kind of expresses like the oh shit moment. And the fact that he's very open about, what he's feeling, I think that's the piece we need to acknowledge is that we're having this conversation in the first place. And then saying like, hey, Rob, James, Scottie, everybody's going to express that in a different way. But the fact that we're all feeling the same thing internally is what's most important. And like how we're externally expressing it isn't as important as acknowledging that it's actually there. You know what I mean? So you can be like, hey, like you're not really being vulnerable. But the fact that he's like, hey, man, I'm being vulnerable is the thing that we need to see, I think. And I don't mean to.
That's interesting. So you don't feel we don't need to necessarily express the emotions on the outside as much as we need to be grappling with them on the inside and being able to acknowledge to ourselves as much as to anyone else that I'm aware of these things and I'm trying to overcome them or trying to allow them or whatever it is.
Well, I think Scottie, A, saying it out loud, and B, kind of having that, like, excuse me, Scottie, but like that, like nervous laughter, that like coping laughter, which maybe it was or wasn't. But like that is expressing an emotion.
Total coping laughter. But it's okay, Scottie. I'm not picking on you, by the way.
No, I do the same thing. I do the same thing. But I think that is expressing it on the outside, just not in the traditional way of like, oh, he didn't break down in tears, so he didn't feel something. But like, but he still showed it in a way. You know, just because it wasn't the way that like we may have expected doesn't mean it's not actually being projected. You know.
And James, I'm guessing you're also not a crier, right?
You'd be surprised. I mean, I definitely.
Really? You're very motivational, upbeat, right? I'm sure you're not crying on your streams or, can't be crying with your clients, but,
But
where's.
Yeah, and you're right. But that is a product of being willing to feel those things and work through those things, whether it's in private or in front of somebody that like I actually care about or whatever. Like those insights that I feel or that I express are often results of going through like a challenging time or something that's deep or something that like, really fucks you up. And then you at the end of that, you kind of be like, there's a lesson here. There's something that I need to project, to get out, to bring to the table, because I've felt something or I've learned something or whatever, and I need to turn around and make a lesson out of this and bring value here because of it. So like I may not have that experience live, but then I turn around and do something with it.
What is the thing, each of you, and I'll answer too, that you are most emotionally? I mean, Scottie, you said turning into your dad, but I mean, like, maybe that is it for you. But the thing that most triggers that sheer helpless sense of dread, because right at some level, what it is that we hate is the thing that makes us feel like we're not good enough, right? I mean, like mine is I'm somewhere deep inside me, I doubt my worth. So I am terrified of not being worth enough for anything. So it's not literally I might fail at my business, that could be it, or racing, but there's a deep sense, right? And I sort of a part of me that just wants to be like, the therapist would be like, you have to love yourself more. You love everybody else. It's like a fear of not being good enough for myself. And when I really let myself think about that, it's the saddest thing in the world, because it's like, dude, if you can't love yourself more, who's, like what? Like you're at the end of the day, it's you. That would be mine. It really cuts that cord. It's hard for me to face, and probably creates a whole lot of dysfunctional behaviors.
Wow.
Well, and I would, and obviously,
did that make you almost cry, Scottie?
I was more just that's
no, I'm kidding.
Beautiful, Rob.
No, I'm kidding.
I think honestly, Rob, I think that probably every single person watching this and listening to this, every single human being, if they're being honest with themselves, would feel the same way. And I think that's part of the craziness of all this is that 100%. Like
deep down, you feel like maybe you're not worth enough.
Absolutely. Like it's when you say that, what I'm thinking about is like all the bullying, experiences in like elementary school and high school, all the things that were said 30 years ago, and being like, maybe they were right. Still being like, maybe they were right. And someday somebody's going to find out that like, the imposter syndrome, like the more that we get, the more responsibility that we get. I do a lot of workshops for CEOs that run like $100 million companies. And one of them literally asked me one day, he was like, what percentage of CEOs do you think feel imposter syndrome? Essentially like, I don't actually deserve where I'm at right now. And without hesitation, I said 100%. And he was like, I agree. And it's that human just self-doubt that is ingrained in all of us, that what you're feeling, I guarantee you, is felt by 99 or 100% of human beings who are actually honest with themselves. I guarantee you that. And whether or not they admit it or not is a different conversation, but it's there all the time. I'm telling you right now. And I think when you get into these conversations, and if you actually ask somebody, like if you really get into a deep conversation and you're like, do you ever feel that way? Everybody will say yes. Everybody. Yeah. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if I may, I totally agree with that, Robin. And the question you asked, what do I fear the most? When I say be like my father, I don't necessarily mean locked in a cage in prison. What I mean too is he wasn't there for my mom. He didn't provide for his family. And so my biggest fear, especially right now with COVID, everything going on, is not being able to provide for my wife, not being able to provide for my family. And that's a fear of mine. That drives me. And so that's what gets me emotional. That's what gets me going, is the fear that I'm going to be like my father, in the sense that he left my mom. He left my mom to have to provide for me alone and to make the money and to feed me. And I hate that, Rob. That gets me fired up. And so that's the one thing in my life right now that is my biggest fear, is being like that part of my dad, you know?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
That's what I mean when I say that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's powerful.
Yeah. And I just, I love my wife, man, so much. And I just want to give her the world. And so when I think about my father, there is a fear there, because it's my trauma that's happened to me. Is like, man, you better hope that you don't end up like your father, who didn't provide for his wife or his son. And that's my biggest fear, man. And
you don't have kids, right, Scottie?
We don't. We're trying, though.
You're trying? And so the reason you don't have kids isn't because you're afraid to have them?
No. Absolutely not.
And James, you don't have kids?
Not that I know of. No, but my girlfriend does.
Right. And so I don't have kids.
Yeah.
So, all right. So shifting gears just for a second. And I saw Bruce clapping back there. I want to show this video just because I said I would tie everything together. But also, there is, first of all, I just have to say, this is like my most watched TikTok video, which says something about people's brains. But it says something about one person in the world who I wonder if he fits James's assessment of wondering if he's worthwhile is Donald Trump. Now, you might say, no, Donald Trump deep down feels like he's not worth it. And I'm not sure. I think deep down, Donald Trump may not be able to actually process that. And then he actually thinks he is everything as good as he thinks he is. That said, there's something about Donald Trump that is wholly disgusting to people. So I went out on the street and I asked people a simple question. How much would I have to pay you to sleep with Donald Trump? Because everybody has a price. And this video says a lot about women and men. So it's very short, but here it is. How much would I have to pay you to sleep with Donald Trump?
Oh, hell no. I ain't doing that shit.
How much? Come on. $1 million?
You can't pay me nothing.
Not enough?
No. No price.
20 million.
No.
$1 billion.
No.
$1 billion.
Hell no.
Hell no for $1 billion. How about you?
What the fuck?
He's not even in the thing. Okay.
Hey.
Okay. So, all right, you guys. So come back. Come back. So, right, it's funny. I see why people watched it. Her thing, no, you know, this like black Latino chick, whatever. No, $1 million. No, billion, no. And I'm like, come on, $1 billion. She's that disgusted her, it's that in her head. But when I turn to him, his reaction to me is priceless, because it's not like no amount of money. It's like, what the fuck? Like, why would you even ask? I can't even process that thought, because that would mean I'm gay. Wasn't about Donald Trump. It was about being a guy. Right?
Yeah. No, and that's another part of, like, you know, men can't even compliment another guy without being like, oh, but I'm not gay. It's like, you just say, but I think it's an underlying insecurity of, like, I need to make sure people know, you know, who I am, or it's like an identity issue. Like, if you're not secure enough in who
James,
you are.
I want to interrupt you. And yet we're in a climate where why shouldn't, again, I'm not trying to be PC about it, but the reality is most straight guys do feel a need to qualify that they are not gay if they're in that situation. And yet most straight guys would say, I'm not homophobic. And most, if they're liberal, people would let that slide. And I'm just saying it's human nature, because it's pretty homophobic to have to be like, just want to be clear, I'm not gay.
Yeah.
Because being gay would, as if, you know, it's sort of like if I had to say, look, you know, I just want to be clear, I'm not a woman. It's like, well, okay, fine. You know, and I don't feel that need to qualify, but I'm also a guy who, like, first thing I say about Scottie is like, what a good looking guy is. I'm not gay. I don't have a problem sort of saying that. I'm not attracted to guys, but, you know, I can see Scottie's a good looking guy and I can acknowledge that, but I don't have to qualify. But that qualification itself becomes a weird thing, right? About our masculinity. Like, somehow I can't say that and be right. And Scottie, your thoughts too, right? People probably think sometimes, Scottie, might think you're gay because super good looking guys who are cool and in LA could be gay.
Yeah, see, I don't actually have a problem. If you were to ask me how much I'd take to have sex with Don, I'd give you an answer. 50,000, 100,000. I have no fear.
How much, Scottie? How much?
I do 100,000.
100,000?
I mean,
Wow.
that's just the
Okay.
truth.
Okay. I would be higher than that, but okay. I mean, that's,
Hey, times are rough, man.
come on, at least a million, man. At least a million.
But I don't have that. I don't have that issue, and I'm not trying to say that I'm fully secure. But I don't have a problem telling another guy or telling a guy that I like his hair or I don't have that. But I
Same.
know that a lot of guys do.
Right.
Yeah, and earlier when you were talking about Scottie, like never once did I think like I wonder if Rob's attracted to Scottie. Like it was just like,
Right.
oh, he's complimenting Scottie. Great. Like I
You
don't
would
understand.
just picture like, hey, what about me? Because no, listen, I gotta say about James, if you put hair back on him, like I'm not saying you don't look good bald and all, but I see the pictures of you. You're like that kind of dark-haired, romantic lead-looking dude. I saw women when I first met you. I saw women look at you. They were like, oh shit.
You're the only person who has told me I'd be better with the hair back.
Okay, I'm not insulting. I'm just saying,
Interesting. No, hey, yeah, but hey, I mean, I'll take feedback.
Okay, so last round of this stuff, and then I want to let our producer jump in because he's a guy too. But first, hold on, Bruce. And I don't know if we had many comments or we didn't. If we did, Bruce will bring some of them up. But I just want to address the last piece of this, which is being a white guy right now, because we're all white guys, and I think it's again, I'm not saying like, oh, pity white guys, but I think white guys are facing a lot of challenges because you already were getting the like, especially if you're a white straight guy, you're already getting the like thing of, the Me Too movement and the men are, always getting stuff over women and the whole thing. And you're a white guy, so now you have white privilege. And, no matter what you do as a white guy, you are at risk of stepping onto some kind of a landmine. Culturally, politically, economically, where you are violating lines and rules for what you do, say, or sometimes just what you even are. And that's got to be hard for a lot. And a lot of white guys aren't going to say it because then they're going to be afraid they're going to be accused of being like something wrong with them for even saying it. But it's an interesting, and again, I'm not saying this like, oh, pity the white guy, but I'm also going, hey, I don't care about 200 years ago that my ancestors, which weren't my ancestors, but who started the country, were all dominating everything. I'm not that guy. So in my head, I'm like, I'm a unique human being, and I face struggles and challenges for being me. But as a white guy, I'm not allowed to necessarily express them or say them. And I'm a pretty expressive person, so I will. But a lot of people won't. And that's got to create like a little of white male hostility that I'm terrified will blow up.
Scottie, do you want to address that first?
Yeah, I mean, with everything going on, I've definitely found myself a little more quiet. I've said a few things, but then I've called a few of my black friends just to see how I can learn during this time. And we had great conversations, but at the same time, some of them even made comments that I was just using that as to show people that I care, that I really. But it's a tough time. And I'm just doing my best just to listen and I don't know, Rob.
How did that make you feel, Scottie? How did that make you feel when they said that? What was your response?
I mean, a little angry because that's not what's on my heart. That wasn't my intention by reaching out or by saying anything. But I just also got to remind myself that, man, there's some really dark stuff going on right now, and I just need to just do my best to listen and learn, instead of talking. That's just my personal opinion.
I'm a reserved judgment on that. Listen and learn instead of talking, because I think too many. I'm not going to reserve my judgment. I think too many people are doing. I need to listen and learn. And yes, absolutely. But people who are articulate, thoughtful voices need to be talking. And just because you're a white guy doesn't mean you should just sit back and listen and learn. I think you should be talking about what you know and your experience as a white guy, and even your interactions with people, your friends who are black, or whatever your world around you, because I think it's a valid voice. And if we're not talking and listening, and we're just getting like old school where I grew up, you went to school and you sat and listened and the teachers talked at you and I learned nothing.
Yeah. I mean, you are absolutely right. I just think that there's a little bit of fear there, Rob. There's a little bit of fear from like what that girl said, that I might just be doing it for show. There's a little fear there. Not that I am, but that even when I do say something that somebody else might have something to say, there's a little fear there.
There's always going to be something to say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the unfortunate reality of being somebody with a voice, is that somebody's always going to be on the other side of it. And it's whether it's a troll or somebody who's like, there's always going to be that. It's like, that's part of pushing through it, you know? And it's like, and one of my clients is actually a Black woman who is a PhD holding college professor. She is like no joke. And we had a conversation. We've had a bunch of conversations during our calls about all of this. And like, and I agree with Scottie in a sense. I also think that we have a responsibility as white guys, because if there is white supremacy, if there is this discrimination, it's coming from white guys. And like part of what you're talking about, Rob, in terms of like who doesn't want to step up and you know, say something, whether it's the homophobia or whether it's whatever, we have to understand that our peers are the reason for this problem. Like, white supremacy is not a Black problem, it's a white problem. Wow. So, but that's even more difficult to step outside and be like, hey guys, like, I'm not cool with this. Like, you're kind of leaving the boys club, basically. So it takes
okay, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
No, so this is an interesting place for this all to kind of come back together, because I think at the same time that is partly true, and to me part of the problem, which is, you know, you say, well, it's your peers, white guys, who are doing it, and I'm like, yes, and probably white women too, but if it becomes a matter of all white people because they are white and have white privilege, therefore, you know, have to collectively account for this, we will implode. Because ultimately, my point about the thing from the 100, where she says you did it to protect the ones you love, there will be a limit where a lot of white people, and I don't just mean old conservative ones, will go, this is now starting to become a situation where I'm not allowed to have my life and do my things because I'm white, and therefore I will draw a line. Because it's one thing to put the black box in Instagram, it's another to post something, it's another even to take a positive action. It's a whole nother thing when I have to start literally kind of taking account for my race. And I just think people will react to that. And I don't know that they should have to. I think, yes, white people who are racist should take responsibility for it. But I think white people who aren't should be able to say, I'm not racist, and I'm not. I will not go out and say I have white privilege. I'm a white guy, and I know that's had privileges, but I just won't do it. But I'll be the first to say, most Black people didn't get the benefits I got, and I didn't necessarily get the best benefits all the time. But I get it, and I get there's an economic and a social and a racial injustice and inequality that's been built in, and we have to fix it. We don't fix it by me saying white privilege. We fix it by people actually making systemic changes. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but
no. And I think that there's an important distinction to be made between looking at the white people who are doing the oppressing and being like, every white person is oppressive. Obviously, that's not the case. But you also have to like carve out the oppressors and look at that group and be like, hey, they're all white. You know, like there's a difference between like categorizing everybody and looking at the people that are doing it and finding the commonality. I don't know if that makes sense, but like I'm trying to draw a line between what you're saying and being like, there's validity in calling out people, in saying like, hey, we need to be better, because without us being allies, essentially, it's not going to change. Like if a certain class of people or a certain type of people are in power, and there's like an underlying uprising, unless it's just completely overwhelming, those people are going to do whatever they have to do to keep that power. But
they are going to keep it.
Well, unless somebody has some sort of moral coming to Jesus moment and be like, wow, like what are we doing to other people around us?
Okay, great. And you know what? The day that happens, even all these companies, you know, a friend of mine pointed something out that I thought was fascinating. He went to Portland, and, you know, he was like, and he's very conservative, but he's very fair-minded. And he went to Portland and he said, you know, did you know the percentage of Oregon that's Black is like, it's the lowest Black percentage in the country. It's like 3% or something, some ridiculously low number. And he's like, it's the whitest state in the country. And yet you go to Portland, and he was like, the 4th of July is all BLM signs and no whatever. And he's like, Nike's got all white executives. You know, it's like white. And yet, and I'm like, right. So that, you know, it was an interesting point, because it's like, You're going to make yourself really diverse? You're going to like give up, you're going to replace all the top execs at Nike with black execs? Or you're just going to run a banner that's like, we support all Black Lives Matter and censor anybody who doesn't? I'm just saying that self-sacrificing thing is hard for people to do. But it's actually costing me something, not just my, not me just putting up a slogan.
No, you're right. You're right. And I think that's part of like the hard thing is the self-sacrificing thing. It's like, when does it become just creating space for other people to kind of like reach the same level?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, if you feel like you're self-sacrificing because you're giving people equal opportunity, you don't deserve the position you're in the first place, because you can't earn it if you open up the competition to everybody else. Like, you had to keep it because like it's the only way you hold on to it is by like cutting out everyone else. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Interesting. All right. And Scottie, last question. I want Bruce to jump in here. Do you feel white privilege? Are you white privileged, Scottie?
I mean, look, I do think that I have definitely a little. Yes, I do. I feel privileged at times. Yeah, I do.
Interesting. Okay. And Bruce, you're part Latino, right?
Yep.
Right. So you're like, but you look very white. You're like whiter looking than me.
Yeah, that's probably like my dad's side. He was a farmer from South Dakota, and then I'm half Peruvian, so I'm 50-50.
Right. So you're the one guy of the four here who can technically claim not to be 100% like the white thing.
Yeah, technically.
And yet, I know. I'm just saying, technically for a tech key. Yeah. Bruce, no, if you listen, I want you to share a thought if you have it. You've been listening. I saw you clapping a couple times. I saw you liking things. Bruce likes his tech machine. While he's doing data and analytics, he's also like kind of like hearing comments and like, he may not be the most talkative on TV, but the guy's got a brain that like, outwires us all.
Because I'm the guy that sits back and just analyzes everything. And so I just wanted to point out, Scottie, was your voice cracking a little bit there?
Which part at the end?
Talking about your dad, talking about being scared of being able to not possibly be able to provide for your family. Was it cracking like a little bit when you were talking?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an emotional. Yeah, I would definitely say it's an emotional part of me for sure.
I wanted to give props to that because I'm sitting here and we do these shows and it's not often that you see someone who's like gonna break down almost to that point, that brink. The last time I think we had was Mr. Scott from who organized all Black Lives Matter over at the Hollywood March, and he couldn't believe how Rob was serious, like bringing serious topics and serious conversation to the show. And to see you just open up like that, I was just like, my man, right there.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, Bruce, because like that acknowledgement too is, I think, as important as showing it. It's like, like Scottie stepped up and show it, and then you step up and acknowledge it and applaud it. Like that in itself, like that kind of positive. It's not just like, hey, let's reward Scottie. It's let's show a public show of, we are supporting each other. I think that's huge.
Absolutely.
That and I wanted to commend the courage. It's not often that you see that someone is willing to put themselves out there. And the fact that you were willing to go there and be open with us, I want to show appreciation. And, thank you for letting us in.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
You got it.
I think is Rob frozen? Oh, no, he's up.
Yeah. No, that's all right. I think we just lost Rob there. His connection was bad. James, do you want to go ahead and plug your book real quick before we wrap it up?
Oh, yes. Thank you. So my first book, actually, it's called Unlocking Love. That is currently available on Amazon. The second one, which apparently I'm revealing the title of and all that stuff tonight, it is called Me, Myself, and Identity. And it is about kind of like building an internal strength in order to overcome external influences and really being super clear on who you are, what you stand for, what your purpose is, what your identity is. And it takes people through, the concepts of building that within yourself. So I think it's really important, not because I'm writing it, but because I've worked with so many people over the years that have faced similar challenges and have a universal struggle, that I eventually said, like, this is needed on a wider level because clearly everybody is dealing with it, but they're not all expressing it. So I figure a book is a way to kind of like purchase it, sit there by yourself. You don't have to tell anybody that you're facing this struggle, and actually find a solution.
Totally makes sense. So when your book comes out, you got to come back so that way we could promote it and highlight it on the show.
100%. Won't be too long, so I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Scottie, your turn. You're up.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of my time. I've created the gentlementor.com just to really encourage and inspire young boys. And we have so many kids without dads out there. I was one of them, and I'm just trying to do my best to make a difference in their lives. So I do a lot of videos and blog posts, so you can check that out at the gentlementor, TOUR.com. And yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it. Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I just talked to Rob. He's still stuck trying to get his internet connection back up. He says, guys, no. Hold on. Wait for me before the stream ends. And I'm just like, hurry up, Rob. Anyways, no, guys, thank you very much for coming on, talking about it. It's weird that I see people here saying that they couldn't hear me. They couldn't hear Rob, but Reddit has been popping off like crazy. And Instagram has been going off too. So I just want to say thanks, guys, for coming on. We introduced a bunch of you over to the Reddit community. So thank you for all you for being on. And on that note, oh, there we go. There's Rob right before I was going to hang up. Rob, there you go. Right as I was wrapping it up.
You did the show without me. So tech hit. I had a feeling it might, and I just was like everything went south on my end. So I know Bruce probably took over for me. Thank you for doing that, Bruce. So Scottie and James, come back up for a sec.
Yep.
Let me have you guys back for a minute. You guys there?
Yeah, still here.
Let me see you. Can I see you?
How do we do that, or just Bruce do that?
Okay,
yeah.
I think we lost Bruce. There you guys are. You're on the side. There you are. So, all right. So I missed out on the grand finale of things, but I'm trust the viewers had fun, and I hope you guys had fun. But I want to wrap this back to one thing before we close it down. I started the whole thing out talking about the 4 deaths, and I did it because I thought they were 4 deaths that weren't life, kind of being so sudden and abrupt. Whether it's the woman going to help, the guy so dark that he hung himself, the mayor jumping, the Glee star, who knows what happened. And I think right now as guys and people, what I want to end with is there's a lot of fear and pain out there. There's a lot of people who are scared. And there's a lot of guys who don't know who to talk to or how to deal with it, right? And I think it's a real mental health crisis because we're talking about, hey, share your feelings and the whole thing. But there's a whole lot of people. Look, any one of us could be gone tomorrow. We don't know, right? Sudden deaths, things happen, you're just gone, right? And I think it's like we're almost afraid to live right now, and yet we need to live more than ever. But if you're dark and afraid and scared, it's hard to live fully because you're trapped in that fear. So what can we walk away with as somebody out there who's like, and I don't mean like call 911 if you're feeling suicidal. I mean, it can give people hope because we've all had our challenges. Scottie, you deal with, James, we all deal with our own stuff. What is the message we can send to people that keeps them from taking the step out of it, because they're not going to just post on Instagram, feeling scared and alone tonight.
Well, if I may, James, I would just say, man, just to talk about what they're going through. But I think in order for us to do that, there has to be people in our lives who we trust and who care about us and who are willing to listen. I think there are so many people trying to give tips. Here's what you should do. I just want to listen to whatever it is you're going through. I don't want to tell you what to do. I just want to listen to you and listen to your pain and just be in it with you. And I think that's so important, Rob. I really believe that.
James, do we have adequate, are there places, tools out there? I mean, should we be setting up a little thing for people to hey, get we started out talking about people needing platforms to do it. You're both influencers, like to start creating a place for people to go, hey, share your 60 seconds of pain. I don't mean to be morose, but
No, I mean, I think that there's value in that. I think that the missing piece to a lot of this is, I touched on identity and purpose when I was talking about like the new book and everything like that. Like if there's missing pieces around identity and purpose, we're going to have a very hard time even knowing who to reach out to because we don't really trust or fully have a bond with someone because we haven't expressed ourselves enough to know who aligns with us. So I think that what we really need to do is kind of get in touch. Like, yeah, we need to talk to other people, but we also need to have that internal monologue of like, what's really important to me? Why am I feeling the things I'm feeling? And where do I want to go like with my life? What is my path? And those are conversations that we're really not having because it requires introspection. And I think that if we can take a little time to do that, and if somebody needs to really reach out to someone, obviously do it. But like if you're just feeling kind of lost, then figure out why and figure out what you're not doing that you should be doing with your life, you know? And when you do that, you're going to be around the people who you do relate to and who you do resonate with and who you can communicate. You know, so
that's good. And look, you're right. Both you're right. And this is a time maybe where people need to see it as a chance to. It's a terribly hard time and a terribly scary time. And I think people losing their job, all kinds of shit's going to keep going down. But maybe it's a time to do that, to process what is it I really want to do.
100%.
What is it I really want to be about? And use that window because you don't know if you're going to get hit by a car helping someone. You don't know, like that sounds dark, but I'm just saying, like, you're worried about getting corona. Like, there's a whole lot of other ways you can go. Maybe it is a time to reflect and do that. And maybe it's also a time for people to do what Scottie's saying, which is, find a safe, I mean, again, it's not everybody has friends they can talk to, but you got to put it out there somewhere. I'm going to be the first to say, you've got to find an outlet. So I don't know what that is. If it is, to just post it on your Instagram and just say, hey, maybe it's post one feeling. I'm a guy, I have a feeling. But honestly, to take
might
one,
reach out and be like, I have that feeling too. I mean, you just never know.
Yeah, maybe just do that. Just post a feeling. Because, at some level, we got to start getting it out there. Because it is to me, like, seriously, a mental health crisis with the number of people who are just imploding in on themselves and not having this kind of a dialogue.
Agreed. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, listen, thank you both for being on. Sorry for disappearing on you for a little while. It was great. It was really informative for me too. And I hope for everybody out there watching or listening, or if you see this on a replay, again, I'm going to be the one who appeals to people. If you're feeling something, call someone. And I don't mean kill yourself. I mean, talk to somebody. I don't care. Post on Instagram. Somebody, this guy's point, James's point earlier, someone will respond. Someone will have the same feeling. And if you're the person on the recipient end of somebody, whatever you do, the one thing people can't do, as a person who I know has dealt with a lot of depression, is be like, oh, don't worry, man. It's all fine. It's going to be okay. That's the worst thing you can do to people who are struggling with feelings. Tell them those feelings, while technically okay, really don't need to exist because, you'll get through it, get over it, get past it, like hang in there. Like it makes you feel like I should never have told you I had those feelings in the first place.
Yeah. It's all valid. Whatever you feel. Valid. Yeah.
Right? Like whatever you feel. And if someone tells you, just be like, dude, I'm sorry. That sucks. It's okay to do that. I think people feel like they have to make it better. It's like when someone says someone died. I've had a lot of death in my life, and I will say, what do you say to someone who said someone died? I say, listen, I'm sorry to hear that. There's absolutely nothing I can say that will make this better. There's nothing I can do to tell you it's okay. Eventually, hopefully, it gets better, but right now, it's the shittiest thing in the world. That's what they want to hear, not like, I'm sorry, but, you'll get through it. It's like, no, maybe, so I'm just saying. Let it go. Let it all out. All right, guys, thanks so much. Thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. James Michael Sama, Scottie Jordan, follow them. Engage with them, share your stuff on Instagram. Maybe we'll form a little thing where people can do share men share a feeling.
Yeah, let's do it. Good idea. Good call.
All right, let's do it. All right. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Nelson. It's Rob Nelson Live.